Martha, I was looking at the Trump 100 group chat earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And there's video of you, in a fight with a robot.
These are the robots that they're using to police the World Cup. And they were showing them off, 4 very macho-looking Mexican police officers. And they've obviously got they look like games consoles, don't they, in their hands, and they're directing these robots. And one of them got the robot to charge towards me. And I was pushing it over. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the video I saw was you and Tor, our producer, just kind of pushing him, yeah?
Pushing the robot, yeah. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
My money's on you, Martha.
I'm Martha Kellner in Los Angeles.
And I'm James Matthews in Washington, D.C. Martha, you've just come back from south of the border, yeah?
Yeah, I spent most of last week in central Mexico taking a look at the security concerns in the country ahead of the World Cup, obviously one of 3 co-hosts along with America and Canada. I was in Jalisco State, which is gangland, home to one of the world's biggest transnational criminal organisations. Jalisco State is where Mexico's most wanted cartel boss was killed back in February. That came after months of pressure from the Trump administration on Mexico to fight the drug gangs. So I've been asking local authorities if visitors will be safe there in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, great stuff. We'll also look at Iran. What else? Conflicting statements, as ever, as to how close we are to a peace deal between the US and Iran. Donald Trump's been speaking on this Memorial Monday. He's been truth posting as well. We'll take a look. So, Martha, you were in Mexico last week ahead of the World Cup.
Yeah, straight back from holiday and onto the road. I was in Guadalajara, as I was saying, Mexico's second biggest city, and it's the host of 4 World Cup games, the likes of South Korea, Colombia, Spain, and others in the group stages of the tournament. And, it is gearing up for the World Cup. There is, a countdown clock in the city's main square. There are posters all around town. They call it the heart of football, Zapopan, which is the place where the stadium is. But, there is a darker side to things because it is also central to Mexico's problem with criminal gangs. And there are security concerns, obviously, ahead of the games being staged there about fans, players travelling.
Yeah, no doubt, because of what happened in February. There was a cartel boss killed near Guadalajara, and there was violence on the street. I remember seeing that. Yeah,
nasty scenes. El Mencho was the individual who was killed. He was the leader of one of Mexico's biggest cartels, and he was taken out by the country's military. And the background to all this is months of pressure from Donald Trump on Mexico and its president to do more to fight the drug cartels. After that operation, which took out El Mencho, you might remember in Donald Trump's State of the Union speech, he praised what Mexico had done.
The cartels are waging war in America, and it's time for America to wage war on the cartels, which we are doing. Five nights ago, Mexican authorities, because of our tariff policies being imposed on them, think of this, handed over to us 29 of the biggest cartel leaders in their country. That has never happened before. They want to make us happy.
They unleash this wave of violence across the country. In Guadalajara, for instance, where I was, the gangs, various factions from various different gangs, they established roadblocks, they burnt down pharmacies, schools were closed, flights were cancelled. Remember stories of tourists being trapped in various beach cities. And there were a number of people killed too across the country. 25 members of the Mexican National Guard were killed, 32 gang members also killed by Mexico's defense forces. And the violence was so bad that some called for Mexico to be stripped entirely of its World Cup fixtures, as well as Guadalajara hosting games. Monterrey and Mexico City are also host cities.
Yeah, lots of pressure on Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum to stay on side with President Trump.
Yeah.
But also to deliver a World Cup that can pass without incident. Guadalajara is, as you know, Martha, a major stronghold for the cartel in that area. So Scheinbaum, she's tried to eradicate the problem, but it only caused violence to dramatically increase as the Jalisco cartel responded to the death of El Mencho. Security concerns are very much a top priority ahead of the tournament. I suppose the question is, Martha, has that violence in response to the death of El Mencho, has that changed how Mexico's police will do their job next month?
I think what we're definitely seeing is a show of force by the police and the military to portray this idea of law and order, because, you know, they want to be seen as being safe for visitors to come in and enjoy the games and enjoy the, you know, the local environment, restaurants, all of that sort of thing. I spent some time at the headquarters of the Zapopan police. That's where the stadium is. And the commissioner was actually telling me that he's recently spent time in the UK, in Chester and Manchester, over the past month with their football policing division. So trying to learn what they can from the English on policing football fans. They were also very keen to show off some of the technology that they'll be using, you know, high-tech drones, AI robots. They've got Black Hawk helicopters at their disposal. They're ploughing a lot of money into this across Mexico. Local authorities, they're spending $55 million on security and surveillance for this World Cup. And it's left a nasty taste in the mouths of many people in Mexico, and especially the families of the tens of thousands of missing people who feel that the World Cup is detracting from the search for their relatives. Yeah,
missing people, that's a scandal in that country. The numbers are staggering, aren't they? 133,000 missing across the country, according to official figures. 16,000 of those in the Jalisco state alone, which includes Guadalajara. I wonder, Martha, do you get the sense that this might overshadow the World Cup in that city in particular?
You know what? In all honesty, probably not, because you know how it is with football. Once the games start, these humanitarian issues fade into the background, as sad as that is. You know, we see it time and again. We saw it in Russia with LGBT rights ahead of the 2018 World Cup, a massive focus. But then once the games start, it's all about, you know, who's scoring and who's playing best. Yeah. We saw it in Qatar as well, didn't we, 2022, and the focus on migrant workers there. And I'm sure what we'll see in this World Cup is Donald Trump being the centre of attention. You know, he will want to be at the heart of the narrative around this World Cup. So I'm sure you and I and the rest of our Sky News team will be talking about Donald Trump and how he inserts himself into this World Cup. But having spent some time in Guadalajara, having learned a little bit more about the missing persons crisis, which is a total scandal, as you say, for the country, I hope that there is an enduring spotlight on that, because I just could not get my head around the sheer number of people in Guadalajara alone who are missing. You go down every street in the city and there are lampposts upon lampposts covered with the faces of missing people, you know, teenagers, people in their 60s, men, women, some of whom have been missing for decades, others who have been missing for a few days. You know, it is this enduring, endless problem there.
Yeah, you talk about football as a distraction, Martha. I'm reminded of the World Cup 1978 in Argentina, which I watched as a young teenager. And of course, that took place in the shadow of the ruling military junta. And, you know, there were thousands of missing people in prisons being tortured, not far from the football stadiums themselves. And you may remember or have seen coverage of the goalposts painted black at the base of the posts, reportedly as a tribute or as a mark to remember the people who had gone missing. That's contradicted by some, but certainly Argentina was a case in point of, you know, absolute scandal, horror in the midst of this great football fiesta, and yet people focused on the beautiful game in very ugly circumstances. The families of the missing people in Mexico, they're left to search for their loved ones alone without any help from the authorities. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's almost the most staggering part of all of this. The fact that they get very little, if any, help from the authorities in trying to solve these crimes and trying to find their loved ones. And I went out one day with a group of 11 women, incredible women, who belong to an organisation called Guerreros Buscadores, Search Warriors is the translation. And they quite literally act on tips and dig for the possible graves of their loved ones. I joined them on one of these searches, which took place in the hills above Guadalajara, 20, 30 kilometres away from the World Cup stadium. It was relentless heat, and they're digging with shovels, which they've bought themselves, pickaxes, and their hands at times. It is backbreaking and unbelievably bleak work. And they basically received a phone call, one of the women, to go to this particular area. Someone said that they'd come across a plastic bag with possible bones in it, and so they took off in their cars and went up there.
Sounds bleak indeed. How often do they find something of interest?
More often than you'd think, and it's this weird set of emotions because they're looking for bodies. Obviously, that is the aim of the game. But when they find one, it's obviously incredibly sad too. And they did actually find a body when I was with them. I watched them uncovering various parts of the body, first of all, a rib bone, and then a skull wrapped in a plastic bag, then the entire skeleton buried alongside registration plates, car keys, a piece of duct tape. It felt almost like you were watching a scene in a film as, these women, mothers, daughters, sisters, were finding bits of this body. It's hard to get your head around.
Yeah, horrendous. Some distance from the excitement of a World Cup.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, I asked one of the women, Maribel, about this. She's been searching for her brother, Jose, for 5 years. And I asked how she feels about all this money and attention being spent on the World Cup, while so many women, men are out there, digging for graves on their own. And she said to me, the authorities are worrying too much about the safety of foreigners, of people who come to the World Cup, and that they're not thinking about the security of them, their relatives. And she said, we expose ourselves a lot in each search, we risk our lives, but we don't have any support from any institution. And I think that is also really important to bear in mind. These women are risking retribution from the cartels for what they're doing, not to mention the fact that, they're giving up work certain days to go and do this. And these are women often living in abject poverty, and they're spending days where they could be making money instead searching for graves. Some of them have done it dozens, even hundreds of times.
Well, thanks, Martha. Your video report of this story is compelling stuff indeed. We'll put a link to the video in the episode description, and you can find Martha's report on all Sky News platforms.
James, bank holiday weekend here and in the UK today. It's Memorial Day in America, but no rest for Donald Trump. Skipped his son's wedding to remain in the country, and kicked off Monday morning with a long, lengthy Truth Social post, again talking about Iran. What else?
Yeah, no rest for Donald Trump, no rest for us, Martha. Look at the state of us, chained to the office. But yeah, Donald Trump, he has posted on Truth Social a rallying call to Gulf states and others to join the Abraham Accords. This, of course, is an agreement some have signed to normalise relations with Israel. And he wrote this: I am mandatorily requesting, he said.
Interesting phrase.
Yeah, that they sign it, basically. He said it would be an honour to have Iran sign up as well. Talk about rose-tinted spectacles. There is zero prospect of some movement, any movement towards mass membership of the Abraham Accords, certainly at the moment. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, the war in Gaza has only embittered their populations against Israel, and Gulf nations, they want Palestinian statehood before they'll contemplate any change in stance. And that's before you get to relations with Iran and all the distrust and dark history that involves.
Yeah, it was a very long Truth Social post. I miss the days when on Twitter you used to have a character limit, didn't you? No such character
Yeah,
limit exists
good
on Truth
times.
Social. Exactly. 500 words it was, Donald Trump's post. And he also lashed out at critics who say that he's been taking too long to construct a deal. It isn't even fully negotiated yet. So don't listen to the losers, he wrote, who are critical about something they know nothing about. But despite all of the words, there's very little to grasp hold of in this Truth Social post. It feels to me like, we're no closer to a deal than we were a few days ago.
Yeah, I like the line where he said, "It will be a document," talking about the Accords, "respected like no other that has ever been signed anywhere in the world." To which the question is, well, what about your own US Constitution, Mr. President?
Good point. Trump also said, his words, that time is on America's side when it comes to making a deal. But I think it's fairly evident that time is not necessarily on America's side, because the Strait of Hormuz is still blockaded. Global oil supplies continue to diminish, and Iran continues to possess missile capability and nuclear enriched material, which Donald Trump says that it can't have. Those issues obviously are all going to be at the centre of negotiations, but there's certainly no indication yet from Iran that they're going to roll over. And in fact, noises that we're hearing from Iranian state media suggest that they're getting more embattled as the days go on.
Yeah, which of course will complicate things going forward. And it plays into the criticism of Donald Trump that he has failed in this, that he's looking for an exit at any cost, and that the war has been for nothing. He is a president, of course, acutely aware of how his performance will be measured. We know that from the spin that he puts on the course of the conflict generally. We certainly know it because of his truthing over the weekend, this continual reference to the Obama nuclear deal. He was rubbishing that again at the weekend. But of course, that's one of the key metrics of success or failure in this for Trump. Does he reach a better deal on Iran's nuclear ambitions than Obama did? Right now, that's by no means guaranteed, nor, of course, is anything else.
Yeah, it does remind me of a tweet from a certain Donald J. Trump 11 years ago, back when there was a Twitter word limit. Before he was elected as a politician, he was running for the presidency against Hillary Clinton at the time, and he tweeted, "No deal is better than a bad deal. America out-negotiated again." That was in response to Obama's nuclear deal with the Iranians in 2015.
There's always a tweet.
Exactly, yeah. It's all there in black and white. The argument, obviously, against Donald Trump right now is that he's negotiating the very thing he's accused his predecessor of.
Yeah, we'll wait to see what happens as peace talks get underway in Qatar this week. All the while, the price of oil remains 30% higher than it was before the war started, and the Strait of Hormuz, even if it does open soon, will take months to get back to regular traffic. And one interesting thing in this for me, Martha, is, this talk of a framework, memorandum of understanding, 60 days to negotiate. If we get to 60 days and there is no deal and Donald Trump has to again threaten military action, I don't see how that squares with his interest, approaching the midterms. In 2 months' time, we're on the verge of the midterms. He doesn't want to be bombing Iran at that time because, well, look at the action at the moment. Look at the unpopularity of the military intervention against Iran in his own backyard. So all sorts of complications for the president moving forward.
James, I won't get out the tiny violins for us yet.
Oh, please do.
It does feel sad working on bank holiday when it's a bank holiday both in the UK and in the US. And especially with the weather in the UK at the moment being so gorgeous and everyone out and at the bars and, sitting in the parks and things.
Yeah, we're getting trolled by the headlines in the UK. In fact, Sky have just pushed an alert. May heatwave, record not just broken, but absolutely smashed. They're all celebrating good times over there. Look at us, stuck in the office. And I have to say, it's tipping it down outside here.
Yeah, well, it's nicer in the UK than it is in LA today. But you're back on the road after we finish recording this podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Off to Pennsylvania, Martha, to find out how much this Iran war is being felt in the pockets of ordinary Americans. Trump, he won states like Pennsylvania with this message of lower prices. and a promise of a booming economy. Iran has stalled that rather, so have a number of other things, tariffs to name one. So we're going to see if that's affected how people feel about the president and the Republican Party. We will be speaking to Trump voters, Democratic voters, and gauging the mood.
Yeah, that's the key question, as we're saying, for President Trump about this war as we approach the midterms. You know, it's unlikely that gas prices, petrol prices will have recovered by the time November comes about. So, yeah, look forward to hearing about that on the podcast. One thing we should mention before you get on the road, James, you and Mark asked on Thursday if anyone was listening to Trump 100 while at sea.
Yeah.
That obviously after we were pipped narrowly to the post by the shipping forecast at the Arias, the radio Oscars.
Yeah, we're not bitter, but...
but we're going to keep mentioning it.
No, but listen, well done to them. Shipping forecast, respect, iconic. But yeah, you know what? Jacob Rogers got in touch. He tells us that he was in fact listening to last week's episode whilst on board the MSC Virtuosa on the way to the Norwegian fjords.
That is a trip that I've always wanted to do. Those cruise ships that go through the fjords, it looks spectacular.
Yeah, you know, I did wonder, your MSC Virtuosa, was that business or pleasure?
I'm sure he wasn't on a cruise ship, but I want to do it on a cruise ship.
All right, yeah. Finer taste than you, Jacob. But thank you very much for getting in touch. Sounds like a fantastic trip. And thank you for all your correspondence over the weekend. We do enjoy receiving it all.
Yeah, trump100@sky.uk is the email if you do want to get in touch.
Yeah, but before we go, Martha, speaking about football, the World Cup and Donald Trump's kind of involvement, are you looking forward to asking football players about Trump and the politics of the World Cup?
That is the big inevitability of this World Cup, isn't it?
These football news conferences when they're all talking about groin strains and, you know, hopes and ambitions. And as news people, it's a question we've got to ask, haven't we?
And you're always so unpopular in those rooms, aren't you? Because it immediately puts the players' backs up.
Have you ever upset a football player by asking him a non-football question?
By asking a non-football question? That's the... I once really upset Caroline Wozniacki, the tennis player, by asking her about her relationship with Rory McIlroy.
Ooh.
It went down like a bag of sick. Do you remember when she was in a relationship with Rory McIlroy?
Yeah.
It was around the time when that was all starting, and it was an innocent question. It was just, and will Rory be coming down to watch you at Eastbourne? It was the Eastbourne tennis tournament, and she just gave me the absolute death stare. I've never felt so unwanted in a room.
Well, speaking of death stares, Alex Ferguson for me, when he sold David Beckham, I was flown to the south of France to find him, and we actually found Fergie. And he was actually in a restaurant. So we kind of charged up and said, you know, Mr. Ferguson, why do you think you have to sell David Beckham? And he just looked up at the end of his meal with this growl and he, I think, about to unload. But his wife just reached over the table and said, no, Alec. And that was it.
Saved you?
Well, yes. And then the waiters came and huckled us out of the restaurant. Thank goodness. So there you go. To be continued at the World Cup 2026. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you soon.
All the best.